All right, so in this one here, I'm going to go through an example of how to create an expression. In this case, I'm going to do an equation, not an inequality, even though on top it says inequalities. But for this, in this case here, I'm going to just go through an expression, and we're going to look at an example that has to do with a basketball team. So we are told that a varsity basketball team has 15 players on it, and it's made up of, or I should say maybe it can be made up of grade 11 and 12 students, or grade 11s and 12s. So how are we going to go through and solve this? Well, let's start with number one. We got to define our variables. Okay, so I'm going to define the variables x and y. X is going to represent the number of grade 11 players. Y is going to represent the number of grade 12 players. Now, very specifically, we have to define our variables and they have to be explained clearly. Okay, they have to be clearly. So make sure that you're doing that when you are defining your variables. Make sure that you are specific with them, not just say 11 and 12, because 11 and 12 could mean anything. Grade 11, grade 12 could mean anything. Say it is the number of grade 11 players or something at least to that extent. All right, now we want to come up with an equation that represents these variables and the number of players that are on the team. Well, we know there's 15 players on the team, and we have maybe some grade 11s, maybe some grade 12s, some combination there. And so we're going to add them together. X plus y equals to 15. Once we have this here, we can then come up with our domain and range. Now our domain, so our x values, well, what kind of x values can we use? Hope you said you can use counting numbers. Those are whole numbers. Yeah. You can't have a decimal number of players and you can't have a negative number of players, just people in general. So when we are talking about the domain, we have to explain that we are using whole numbers. Yeah. So we want to explain that we're using whole numbers. Now, if you want to also say it has to be between 0 and 15, you can do that as well. But that whole numbers really is important because we're dealing with whole people. We're not dealing with partial people because that doesn't work. Okay, so we are dealing with whole people. All right, now the range is going to be similar. In this case here, y is going to be a part of the whole number system. And I'm just going to move my picture across here really quick, okay, because we're going to get set up something, we're going to get something else set up here as well. All right, so here's our domain and range. Now we have defined our variables, we have given an equation which represents this situation, we have given the domain and range which describe what is happening to the variables. Okay, it puts limitations on the variables specifically, not just on the situation or the context. Now I can graph it out. So I'm going to put my graph up there, and this is what it looks like when I say x plus y is equal to 15. Now, this graph is somewhat accurate. Okay, somewhat accurate because it's a line which represents that every single point along this line is a part of the situation, which our domain and range tell us they are not. Okay, you'll notice it even goes into the negatives. So here's my question for you. Does this point here, 7.5, 7.5, work? Meaning there'd be 7.5 grade 11s and 7.5 grade 12s. Does it work? No, I hope you said it doesn't. Okay, and the reason for that is that it is not a whole number. Okay, in the same way, we can't use negatives in a case like this. It has to be positives. So what our graph should actually look like, and this is really tough to graph out, and I'm not going to force you to do that, at least not in my class, is your graph should look kind of like this, where you have a bunch of dots. Okay, dot, 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 dot. Every single dot that actually works. 0, 15, 1, 14, 2, 13, 3, 12, all the way up to 15, 0. These are the dots that actually represent it. You'll notice they do not go into the negatives in any way. Okay, this is what our graph would actually look like. So only those points are the ones that do in fact work. Okay, so use that as an example. Hope that helps you, and all the best as you continue with your practice.